an abo. But
Abo.
we'll get back to that later. I've clicked the go live button, and Darko, off you go.
Button is light. Hello.
We're live.
We're live. Okay, so
We
hi,
are live.
hi, and welcome to this Wednesday morning stream on Ask Me Anything about, well, not about. Ask the developer advocates in EMEA anything or almost anything. My name is Darko, and today we have 4 people here. We're gonna hopefully answer all of your technical and non-technical questions. And also, we're going to discuss some technical topics that come to our minds. Today, we have an hour-ish to do this. So I will let everybody here, clockwise, introduce themselves. Kobus.
Thank you. My name is Koos Bernard, and I'm also a developer relations based down in Cape Town. So if you have any, let's say, automation, DevOps, cloud fundamentals, EC2 container security type questions, I am more than happy to play with those because I've been working on that for a while. And other than that, I will now, and this is going to be fun, give it over to Marcia.
Thank you. Now it's going to be hard to give it to Boaz because I don't decide this, so yeah. So I'm Marcia, developer advocate as well, based in Nordics in Finland. So it's already starting the ugly autumn here. It's very dark. Darko likes this place, I know. And I can help you with your questions about serverless, amplify, and things in the managed world. So yeah, shoot them to me, and I will try to pass it to that side. Here you have.
Okay. I hope the order of the windows is exactly the same for everybody.
Yes,
so hi everybody. I'm Boaz. I'm a developer advocate from Tel Aviv, Israel. Oh, stop doing that. And I've been a web developer for 2 decades. So this is a topic I really like, and we'll be happy to answer your questions, discuss things that are related to this, and back to you.
Oh, Darko dropped the ball.
Okay. We're done with this, I think. We're done with this.
Absolutely. But it's good to get the people cheesed up in the morning. My name is Darko, as I said. I'm also a developer advocate based in Berlin, Germany. And I am focused on doing this thing, I guess, right now. So my focus is on Central Eastern Europe, and same as this gentleman right here. I also do automation, DevOps, and basically everything he does. I'm not based in Cape Town, and I don't speak Afrikaans.
But I mean, also, if we ever have any issues, we just do this, and then we just swap places, and people don't notice.
Nobody will notice.
Exactly. Hello from Greece, and we have a first question coming from Marcia's channel, I guess.
Yes. Today we are getting a lot of serverless questions, as always.
Of course.
Oh yeah.
Satya is here. Satya, but hi, Satya. Welcome back to the stream. Ganesh Adapa. What is the simplest way of implementing integration tests in AWS Serverless? Now, I know Marcia has this answer, and I've seen her talk about it, so I'll let the lady in the corner answer it.
Yeah, actually, yesterday I just posted a video talking with Nicolas Mounchen. I don't know how to pronounce his surname; it's so hard. And we talk about tests in serverless. I post a video link in the YouTube channel. And there, one of the ways we talk is about how integration tests differ from end-to-end tests. He was running most of the tests from local host to the cloud. But you can also integrate those tests in your CI/CD. So he was using basically normal testing frameworks that you're familiar with. In this case, he was using Python to run the test. And he was passing, for example, parameters like your endpoints. If you want to do integration tests, you need to focus on the configuration between your different services. So you're not focusing on testing if Dynamo is working, but you're focusing on testing if the message is being captured. So, for example, one of the interesting things we were discussing is how, for example, he can test if Lambda was producing an event not by checking the output of Lambda, but checking the consuming of the event, in this case, event bridge. So you really need to look when you're building your integration test at the big picture. And I think that's important to understand what you're really testing. Are you testing the integration of Lambda emitting an event and generating an output? And well, maybe you should go and make sure that event is generated and that output is in the format that you wanted, instead of going to Lambda and ping Lambda, because that maybe doesn't help you and it's very complex to do the test. So try to look at the big picture and try to understand where are the points of failure, and don't do, if you're doing integration test, don't do end-to-end testing. That's a totally different thing, and that will cover the flow of your application. What, for example, the client will do is do an HTTP call and get a response, and that's an end-to-end test, basically. So focus on your integration between two services inside your own logical microservice. And then if you need to do integration tests between microservice, then you focus on the integration between those microservices in the contract. So be very focused on your tests. So that's some of the tips that I will give you when building the integration test. But check the video from yesterday, because Nicolas explains with a lot of examples and code and everything how to do those tests.
Okay, cool, excellent. So feel free to shoot your questions in the chat. We're happy to. Yes, also, Marcia, you need to put money in the jar.
Oh, I will be so poor after this thing, because I'm the most horrible content promoter ever.
That's okay. We at least get money for charity or something the like. So feel free to shoot us any questions in the chat. We are open to answer a lot of the questions coming from you. Of course, they should be cloud focused, but feel free to ask us anything technical related, anything AWS related as well. While we're waiting for people to come and ask questions, I would like to speak, and Boaz actually had this idea about talking about some new feature available in Amazon Aurora. So
news from Amazon Aurora. So Amazon Aurora is now supporting 128 terabytes of storage for a database, for a relational database. I think this is a very important part to mention. I still remember the days when 4 terabytes was the max, and you couldn't do anything about it. Like, live with it, clean your database every week, make sure you have your sanitation scripts, something I've been doing a lot, removing things that you probably won't need, but you never know. And having this limitation sometimes was a real issue. Aurora was supporting 64 terabytes for a relatively long time. I don't remember exactly if any of you remember when this was launched, but this is, I think, maybe from day one for Aurora, and now 128 terabytes. So my main question, people on the chat as well, what would you do with 128 terabytes for relational database? That's an interesting part, and I think another consideration is performance, and because Aurora is much better performing than the MySQL or PostgreSQL alternatives, I think that you actually can work with such amount of data using the new or the improved storage engine of this database. So this is very interesting.
Yeah, that's actually the point, because Aurora is split between multiple compute units against the common storage unit, right? That's how Aurora basically is architected. So in essence, it should have much better performance across a vast storage array, such as 128 terabytes. Now, the question here would be, what kind of a transactional database or a relational database it is of 128 terabytes? It shakes me to my core. Is that like a data storage, a data warehouse database? I mean, you can use a relational database as a data warehouse, but what would be the use case of 128 terabytes? Do we have a customer? Yeah.
Well, I mean, from that, what I've seen in the past is like for any OLTP system, so online transactional processing system that is very high throughput, that is not uncommon. I mean, obviously, you want to ship the data off that database once you get close to that limit, because you won't have fun when you hit the limit. But having like terabytes worth of data just streaming in, and literally as it's streaming in, you then move it off again, is actually quite a fun challenge. One of the projects I had to do was how to do that without locking the table. Because what happens if you select too much on a table, what normally with the engine happens is firstly you do like page level locking inside the data set, but if you do it too wide, all of a sudden it locks the entire table until your read is complete. So lots of fun in there.
Okay. But, I mean, I guess
Yeah.
there's absolutely a requirement for 128 terabytes. Otherwise, maybe we would not be introducing this feature because hey, a lot of features come from customers. So I can only imagine that customers can work with 128 terabytes.
Yeah, I'm sure that Cobus' example of transactions, high-load transactions, and then the need to go and start thinking about solutions. What should I do with this data when I hit the limit of, 4 terabytes or 64 terabytes, doesn't matter which technology you're using. It's right now is solved. You don't need to do that anymore. And I think it's a very good point Cobus mentioned, that when you hit this limit in databases, this is a complete disaster.
Exactly.
Getting to a point when you have very low or no disk space for your data partition. God, been there.
Yeah,
it's not fun.
I remember my friends who were like Oracle DBAs, and they would do like when they would run out of disk space, you have like these things called like something like storage pods, and you have to attach new storage and then renormalize the database across new storage. It would require a lot of downtime. So having a high level of like limits of 128 terabytes like makes your life that much more easier. And if you reach 128 terabytes of storage, you either did something very good or something very bad. But that's fine. Cool. I think it's a really neat feature. I think that it's always good that we have increased limits. I have another thing to comment on increased limits. The default ECS and Fargate limits have been increased. Actually, the default Fargate limits have been increased. So the default Fargate limit before was 150 executions on demand computes, and it was 200 for spot. Now the default limit is 500. So any new, basically, I think clusters would have the default set to 500, which is increased even further. So that's a really neat way to do it.
So Darko, I have a question for you and maybe for Marsha as well. Why do we have these limits? I was asked exactly this question earlier this week regarding why do we have a limit for 1,000 executions for Lambda? Why do we have those limits for Fargate and others?
At least in the managed services, they are there to make you safe because they're soft limits. So it's not that, I don't know, in Aurora, maybe it's a more implementation limit, but in the serverless world, when you are working with the 1,000 Lambda executions, it's just a matter of helping you to prevent mistakes, or if you do something that you are not expecting, or some weird behavior, or even some hacking or something, then that concurrency will not reach. So then your wallet will not suffer, and you are not calling support like, oh. So I think that's why it's very important when you're working with the serverless world to do some kind of performance test, because even though we always talk about serverless scales automatically, there are all the soft limits in place, and sometimes you will find bottlenecks, some soft limits, for example, the amount of Cognito accounts you can have against the amount of Lambda executions, or the amount of Dynamo capacity that you are getting might not fit your needs exactly. So you need to do a couple of performance tests to know that all your soft limits are in the right place. And if not, it's just as easy as sending a support ticket. They will raise it automatically and you're safe.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So, and I used to work in premium support, and we get a lot of comments on or requests about increasing limits, and mostly they're there to protect you, right? Especially a new account has a lot of limits in place. I think you cannot do anything until you launch your first EC2 instance or something like that on a vanilla AWS account. So you need to launch an EC2 instance before you can do anything else. At least that's
not true, because I never launched an EC2 instance until I talked with Cobus.
I don't do EC2. I don't do EC2.
And my account works very well.
Okay. But I know that initially, like, one of the things that support would tell you, like, if you log into your account and nothing works, or you want to do something. So what happens is customers create an account and they want to do like I want to launch an SAP HANA cluster, and no, you can't initially. So you have to basically launch something very small until your account warms up, and then you can do that. Basically, there's just protection schemes in place. So. Yeah,
but I mean, also I think specifically on the SAP HANA example, remember those instances, the X1s, go up
Yeah.
to 24 terabytes of RAM. Those are monster machines, and it's not like there are like buildings full of them. So
Yeah, exactly. So, first of all, thank you, Pubudu, for the comment on my voice. I've just increased my volume here, hopefully, and I approached my microphone a bit more. So hopefully it's a bit better compared to the others. Also, I wanna show something. So, 15th of October, in month and a half, we have a modern application dev day. So if you're a developer on AWS, so if you are looking for more, sorry,
it's in 2 weeks.
it's in 2 weeks. Oh, 2 weeks.
yes,
I thought it
We
was
are
the
in
first.
October.
Yeah. October is tomorrow.
It's in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you are looking for more in-depth technical topics on AWS, anything from serverless to monitoring to infrastructure as code to IoT to analytics and databases, in a more, let's say, technical approach, not a very high level overview, come and join our developer day, dev day on modern application development on the 15th of October, and there's the link. Please register, and you'll get to see all of our faces talk to you on some very interesting topics, which we are currently trying to.
What are you going to talk about, Darko?
I'm going to talk about developer tools on AWS. I'm going to talk about a deep dive on AWS toolkits, a bit of X-Ray, a bit of all the code lovely tools. I'm going to talk about infrastructure as code, as I always do. So I have 2 talks. I'm very happy about it. And I actually have to record some of it today. So fun times. But
Good luck with the demos.
yeah, exactly. Well, slides and the demo. So, but it should be fun. Dev days are really good because you get to hear content which is very much focused on developers and engineers. So very much for you who wish to learn more. So it is high quality content coming from wonderful people such as these people here.
And we're going to have 3 tracks. So important
Okay.
to mention as well, IT managers and DevOps, architects and developers. So you can probably find something that is a good fit for what you're looking for.
Exactly.
And Marcia, what are you talking about?
I'm talking about CI/CD for serverless. So it works a little bit with Darko's talk, but focused really on the serverless aspect. So my talk, besides covering a lot of the code tools, it will have a lot of SAM. So that if you want to learn AWS SAM, I will be really going into the depths of it.
Yeah,
Cool.
Yeah. I just pasted the link also in the chat, so you all can see the link there. So you have to try to copy it from the screen. And Boaz, are you doing a talk as well?
Yeah, I'm doing the keynote. I'm going to talk about modern application development in general. Going to do the setup for all your deep dive technical talks later on in the day. We have office hours as well, by the way. So I think some of you, Cobus, you're doing.
So we're going to be doing office hours.
Yeah. So we're going to do office hours at the end of the event. It's going to answer questions that would come during the event and questions that are going to come live. So make sure you tune to the office hours as well.
Yeah, and also during the sessions, we will be there to answer your questions. So you can always ask.
Exactly. Cool. So make sure not to miss that. It's always fun. I am always looking forward to doing sessions there. Yeah.
And just to make Marcia happy, my session is all about EC2 instances.
Ooh.
No. So yeah, Marvin is how to make use of Spot instances and actually how to blend them for both EC2 usage as well as with ECS Fargate. So yeah, so I'm going to show you how to play with those things that Marcia doesn't like.
So yeah, fair point. So speaking of Spot instances, Cobus, I always had I was always wondering, like, is there a way to maintain state on Spot instances, or it's only for workloads that have no state?
There are actually the first one is if you have a stateless workload, then your life is going to be simple. You don't have to worry. So if you're in Spot instance, actually just step back quickly. Spot instances, for those not familiar, is there's a mechanism you can use excess capacity in an availability zone, and that comes at a fraction of the price, like up to 90% discount, depending on which one you pick. With the caveat that if we need that specific instance back, we'll send you a 2-minute warning, and then you've got 2 minutes to finish up whatever you're doing, and then we'll shut the instance down and actually reallocate it elsewhere. Benefit is that that actually doesn't happen that often. It's the last that I saw was over 3 months for the last, or across all regions, only 5% of instances were terminated. So yes, they could be, but it doesn't happen that often. And when it does happen, you need to know how to handle that. So if you've got a stateless workload, you don't have to worry, because guess what? You just run it elsewhere. If you do have a stateful workload, there are a couple of ways to do it. The first one is that you can use a EBS volume to attach and let you just persist whatever the state is onto it and then start it up again. There are, if you're using Spot, for example, in SageMaker, there's literally a checkbox that says do checkpointing. So what happens then is while you're busy training your model, if that instance goes away, at certain points we do a snapshot of how far the training model is. And then what will happen is that it'll just start from that checkpoint going forward again automatically for you.
That's very cool. That is very cool.
And what my talk is about, little teaser, is that how you can blend different instance family types. So take a C5 family, which is a compute intensive, along with the M5, which is a general purpose, along with the R5, which is a memory intensive, and to pick Spot instances across all of those. And then what you can do is, because you're spread across the different instance families, the chances of all of them being depleted is very, very low. So what will happen is that, let's say the M5s are needed, those go down, and the C5s go up again. And that's how you balance those and still get the cost savings.
That's a very cool thing, man. I know that the Spot mixing came up recently. I think it was something relatively new. Is that the case?
It came out start of the year, I believe, or with reInvent last year. But so you could always do this before by having multiple auto scaling groups with one per family type. Now you can have them all in the same actual auto scaling group, and you can even weight them. So you don't have to pick the same size. Even if something's twice the size, you can give it a weighting, and that weighting is taken into account when you scale up and down based on your parameters. So it's quite interesting. It's literally just a couple of clicks, and you get this nice blend.
Very cool, very cool. Now, we do have a few questions in chat from Ricky U1978. Using API Gateway with Lambda, I have set up a JWT authorizer for each route using RSA-256. Can I do away with API Gateway? I find it overkill to simply protect 30 plus Lambdas. Any easier way, or still API Gateway?
Well, I think for API Gateway, it's the easiest way to go. But if you use infrastructure as code, like some, you only need to define the authorizer when you're defining the API Gateway route on the top of your configuration file. If you have the 30 Lambdas in the same some template, for example, and there is, well, I don't know, defining the authorizer might be 5 lines of code. So it's as simple as it can get. I don't know if you're doing it manually, then yes, it's a pain to go and do it in other routes, but that's the magic of infrastructure as code. Do it in your SAM template. And on the top, you define your authorizer, you define your API gateway. You say, okay, I want to use the Lambda authorization. This is the ARN for the Lambda, and that will apply to all the different API gateways that are under that path, basically, and then you can define all the routes for the API gateway underneath. So I cannot think it can be easier. I hope that helps.
But also, wouldn't like using so overkill of API gateway, maybe the REST API is on overkill here, but an HTTP API, maybe that's simple. And there are JWT
the new HTTP API doesn't have Lambda authorizers yet. It has IAM authorizers. So if you want to use that instead of a Lambda authorizer, that should be okay. But that's for authenticating service to service. So if you're using Cognito, then you will be able to do the authorization. But it should, I hope it comes out soon, because that's one of the coolest features, these Lambda authorizers.
But would an API gateway be an overkill for 30 different Lambda functions? I mean,
no,
I say not.
I don't think so.
If you would
the
say
other
like one
option
Lambda function,
is to use a load balancer, but then you need to configure that and you need to manage that, and that's I think it's more work than just having the API gateway. But it's always, I think the discussion is maybe on the cost side, but if you had 30 Lambdas, it should, I don't think it's an overkill. I think it's a good pattern to have an API gateway in front of your Lambdas and add the authorizer. if you do it with the application load balancer, you need to build the whole thing yourself. So you will need to create still the Lambda authorizer in the way. There is no concept of authorizer in the application load balancer. So you will need to basically put that Lambda in between and then connect the authorizer Lambda to the next Lambda. So you will need to manage all that flow. And that's more work for you, more cost of ownership, more code to maintain. So just make it API gateway do it for you.
Absolutely, and I see that Ricky says here that he is doing it manually.
Don't. I can put a video. I will put more coins in the bucket of coins, but I have a whole playlist on doing authorizers with Sam in and there I can show you how easy it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, especially when it comes to serverless, I fail to see why anybody's doing it like manually, like creating a serverless application, by clicking their button. You can do it. There's a wizard on the Lambda console and all that stuff, but doing it for a production grade, that would just be too complex.
I know, but
my eyes.
For me, I don't know how to create a Lambda from the console, if I'm honest, because I only created Hello World Lambdas from the console, and that's as far as I go. I always do everything with SAM or now CDK or serverless framework. I have even built Lambdas with Terraform, but with the console, for the simplest demo that that I can imagine. But actually, I think it's so much easier to do with SAM. Yeah. So.
Absolutely. I forgot how to click on a console for sure. Let's add another question regarding serverless. So Marcia, this is also going your way. How do serverless applications health check, or how are the health checks done on serverless applications?
Well, I think here there is many ways. One way to do health checks now is using CloudWatch, how it's called synthetics, that allows you to basically check regularly on an endpoint that if it's returning what you want. And with synthetics, basically you can do things as simple as just if this is returning something, to really do end-to-end tests, because you have a scripting mechanism there that is that you can customize. And that's, for example, one way of doing the health check, because it's constantly running. You will define how frequently it will run, and you can ping your the same places that your customers will be pinging, for example, the endpoints or things like that. So that's one of the strategies to do health checks.
So, CloudWatch synthetics.
CloudWatch synthetics.
Perfect, cool. Now, we've been discussing this before the stream started. That the week before last, we've launched something new. They are called the T4G instances. So for any people who are very interested in running ARM workloads or workloads on ARM CPUs, we have launched the smaller burstable version of our EC2 instances called running on Graviton 2 processors, which is our own in-house built ARM CPUs. And
this is the G.
The G.
Yeah, the G in the name.
Yeah, T4G, yes. Yeah. So T4G, the Graviton CPUs are basically our in-house built processors. And now with the T4 instances, you can get them cheaper, and also you can get them free, even if you have spent your free tier until New Year's Eve. Until the end of the year, we have a free tier of 750 hours for the T4 type instances. Now, Boaz and I were discussing about what can you run on a T4 instance, actually a Graviton-based instance. So, what do you think, Boaz?
So I'm actually I spin up one of those instances. I think 2 days ago. I just launched it and didn't do anything yet. I think I have a target to run a full LAMP stack on it. In theory, it should be possible. So there is a version for MySQL that runs on ARM. There is a version of PHP, kind of. I think it's semi-official, so I'll check it out. And eventually, if I'll be able to run LAMP stack on ARM, I will try and put something like WordPress or cool Laravel application or something like that to test it. I think that the value for money for those instances is pretty amazing. Exactly. Super powerful, very cheap. Can be a great alternative for some of our compute needs. So I have a target to do that. I'll try to document it while I'm going through the steps so people can replicate it. And I think it's definitely something worth checking. It's worth mentioning that there is a free trial of the T4G micro instances, and you basically get 70, 150 hours, basically equal to a full month of usage of a single instance until the end of the year. So it will be deducted from your bills. So feel free to play with it. They're going to be free for you. The T4G micro, 70, 100, 750 hours every month until the end of the year. So actually a nice addition to this launch.
Absolutely. And I think I think Kobus and I discussed this a while back, that T4 instances, or the Graviton, not T4, sorry, the Graviton-based instances are just a great bang for your buck, right? So they provide you with a lot of value for the amount of money you pay. So they're by default cheaper because they're using home built processors, our own in-house built processors. So they're cheaper by default, and they do have limitations. They're running ARM, so your application needs to be capable of running ARM. But I believe, Kobus, you mentioned that you can run Docker or you can run specific containers on ARM, right?
So I think just to clarify that for those who aren't familiar with the difference is that most people are familiar with x86 instruction-based CPUs. So for example, most Intel CPUs, most AMD CPUs. And what Doc is pointing at is Raspberry Pis. Now, ARM-based CPUs are, you definitely have one if you've got any kind of modern-ish mobile phone, because they're used almost exclusively in the phones as well as the base CPU. Now, what this means is that the actual instruction set used to run the code is different, because it's literally different transistors on the physical CPU. So why this is interesting and why you need to know about it is that if you want to run your app on an ARM-based architecture instead of on x86 architecture, your runtime or compiler needs to support that. So good news here is that Docker, not only is it supporting an ARM, they actually built in a feature that when you pull an image, it can actually take the architecture into account when you pull the image. So you still say pull whatever your flavor is, and if there's a copy of your architecture, you'll actually be able to pull it without you having to specify anything special, which is super useful.
Yeah, I had that thing just yesterday on this little thing in the back end. So this is actually not an old computer; it's an old monitor running on a Raspberry Pi, and I wanted to build myself a Nyan cat. There's a lovely Docker image like of a Nyan cat, or just whatever Nyan cats are doing, and the Docker image doesn't support ARM. So I tried to run the Docker command, like everybody would do it. It doesn't support it. So I had to compile it, not the Docker image. I had to compile the application for ARM. So even if the application doesn't have a binary available for ARM, you can compile it for yourself if you want. So with some workarounds, you can make it work quite good on an ARM CPU. And I'm a big fan of having player 3 enter the race next to Intel and AMD. And having cheaper, equally as good CPUs out there is very, very cool. And I am looking forward to see what happens more with ARM architectures as we go along. And as Boaz mentioned, generic workloads such as LAMP stacks, web servers are most likely to be very good candidates for something like this.
Yeah, yeah, and Nginx and Apache are supporting ARM for a very long time. So
exactly, I did run Phoronix Test Suite. It's like a benchmarking tool for Linux. It installs PHP, and yeah, I could do it on a Raspberry Pi. So I could even install it on one of these. This is a Rockchip R8. It's an R8 ARM architecture, like very old, but I can install a PHP on this thing. I'm not sure about MySQL, but PHP works. So a lab stack would work for sure, but I'm not sure about MySQL. But we do, well, as you mentioned, we do have RDS running on Graviton right now, right?
Yeah. We just launched. I think it's a preview.
It's a preview, yeah.
So worth mentioning, it's in the slightly more powerful R series instances. I think
R6.
Check it out.
Yeah. So you want to use RDS on ARM? You can. I would assume that it's also cheaper. I mean, hope so. But it is currently in preview, so you can kind of play with it.
It's the M6G.
M6G. Okay, M6G.
M6G
so we have
and R6G. Yeah.
So currently 4 options for Graviton on AWS: the T4G, M6G, C6G, and R6G. if you want to do Graviton instances. And according to benchmarks out there, the Graviton 2 CPUs are by far the most powerful ones most powerful ARM CPUs in the world. Well, not in the world, but in common use. Let's call it that way. So
In this
pretty
category.
cool. In this category, exactly. So that's pretty cool. Cool. Let's see. There's a question from Edward Allen Mercado. What AWS native data visualization tool is more appropriate for visualizing data from DynamoDB? QuickSight doesn't support DynamoDB. Is there a native tool for the visualizing data from DynamoDB? I know there's a NoSQL workbench, but that's not for visualization.
Yeah, but that's for modeling.
So, Edward,
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I'm thinking.
The console.
The console.
So, well, what you can set up is from DynamoDB, there are various ways to actually export your data to S3. So you can actually then query it directly from S3 using Athena.
Exactly.
So that's one route I would go. The alternative is also maybe if you've got a Redshift cluster or a Redshift Spectrum to maybe look at that, importing that as well. And then as a third fun method is if you've got one of those, there are ways to do federated queries inside Redshift into other data sources, including Dynamo, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So there are a couple of ways of doing it.
It does require you to
Dynamo
spin up
has a way to do queries in the tool, so you can do all the queries that are basically allowed in Dynamo is something you can do there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, I mean, the options here would definitely be, having some sort of Redshift cluster or something like that. But that would require a lot of additional spinning up some resources, which is potentially not something that this person would want. A native tool, I don't think there's a native AWS service that can visualize DynamoDB data, but I'm sure that there are some third-party open source alternatives out there that can help you do all of those things for sure. If not, just export the data to S3 and put it in Athena and then just do QuickSight again.
I think it depends what you really need to visualize. What is the need for visualization? Do you need graphs like QuickSight provides, or do you just want to do queries? I don't know what it means by visualizing the data. There is many types of visualizations that you can
I guess
do.
you can use Grafana, right? Grafana for a lot of the graphs if you want to do from DynamoDB, right? But I wouldn't know. Like, unfortunately, never had a requirement to do such a thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, do check out. Well, first of all, define what you want to do actually. What kind of visualization you want to do with the data from DynamoDB, and if you want to do some periodic reports or something like that, maybe an export to S3 and then using Athena to make a report out of QuickSight would be a better approach to do this if you want something more complex and native.
The good thing with Dynamo is that when you put data in it or change it, it generates the Dynamo streams. You can enable those, and then you can write into other means. So if you want to take particular data, I don't know, out to do aggregations or visualizations, you can write to Redshift, you can write to Aurora, you can write to S3, whatever. So you can play a little bit with the streams. So so he says that he needs graphs generally. So I don't know, maybe that's a route that you can go use the integration with streams and then put it in somewhere that you can integrate with QuickSight.
Yeah, for sure. Something like that would be an approach that we can take here.
Yeah, I'm sure there are third-party tools as well, by the way. So maybe not open source, but I think Redash can query multiple databases, including my DynamoDB. So that might be an option. Yeah. And they have pretty nice graphs and visualization in general.
And that's also a valid point. So because when people ask a native AWS tool, what does native mean for you? Does it mean like running on AWS? But it can also be like a third-party tool that closely integrates with AWS that can just work as natively as something else. We don't have all the services, all the features, all the bells and whistles you might like, but there are so many amazing people out there, so many amazing companies that support us. Yeah. So yeah.
Definitely.
Very important. Cool.
Check for partners.
Partners, exactly. Cool. Yeah, so there we go. So he sees trigger stream, then write on S3, then QuickSight. Yeah, you can do that, absolutely. If you want to do more complex. mind you, additional costs are coming with that as well. So just so you know. Cool. So we have people saying good night from Los Angeles. Good night.
Oh, that's a very late
Well,
night.
that's a very late night. Oh my. But okay, thank you for joining us. In any case,
Oh.
feel free to shoot us any questions. We're on the 40-minute mark. So this is the EMEA or EMEA Developer Advocate Ask Me Anything stream, where we have us 4 developer advocates from the EMEA region, Europe, Middle East, and Africa, regions where we answer your technical questions relating to AWS. We're streaming this live on YouTube and Twitch on, I think, 4 channels at the current state. So feel free to send us any questions you may have. We would be happy to answer them. And if you don't have any questions, maybe we can think some interesting topic to talk about. So what else was new from last week or in the last few weeks from AWS? Let me try to remember something very interesting.
We need to celebrate with Cobus. There is a launch in Cape Town.
Yes.
Well, okay. We need to be very careful with what we say with launch when we say what the service is, because it might be confusing and people might think
that's true.
So Ground Station,
Station,
which is an AWS service that allows you to use a physical ground station as in a building that communicates with your satellite. To use that as your mechanism for communicating with it is now available in the Cape Town region.
Okay.
Let me see if I can get a link. Yeah. So just to clarify, we don't launch the satellite for you. I don't want to say yet because it might be, might not. I honestly don't know, but I don't want to get into trouble. So, but it is the ability now, if you've got a satellite in orbit, that you can actually use our services to communicate and actually do the data transfer and handle all of that for you, which is awesome because that makes, managing satellites easier, which I would assume is slightly complex and one less thing for you to worry about.
Well, that's the thing about satellites. I think the most complex thing about a satellite is not launching it in space. I think it's everything else around it you have to do, like actually retrieve the data from it. And I was always fascinated about satellites. How can they be geostationary? Like that for me was like, I'm not sure if any of you had a satellite dish on the house. Like for me, one of my earliest forms of proper TV was satellite. And I had a SkyStream. It was a PCI card in a PC that you can connect your antenna to. It's like I forgot the name, but like you have to nudge your antenna just a little bit to catch one of the satellites there. And I was always fascinated, like that thing is far away and it's always in the same place. Like, oh man. So but digression. so
maybe just clarify that. So geostationary is if you look up at where the satellite is currently, it means that it always stays at that point for you, regardless of the Earth spinning. So relative to the Earth, it's staying over here and moves
together
at the same speed as the Earth. Yeah. So that's how it stays quiet.
So that's when you put your antenna at 19.2 degrees east and catch the Astra satellite, and it's always in that place.
I actually remember the Astra satellite.
Astra, yeah, that's the one I used to catch. Astra, yeah, man.
Yeah.
Satellites and I remember
slightly different angle in Israel, but
yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's true. For me, it was 19.2 degrees east.
I don't remember
at least. I remember because I had a compass on me and trying to find my hand. But it's very interesting because the fact of you launching a satellite is relatively easy, and there's companies who help you launch satellites. But for you to keep the data coming in from the satellite back to somewhere is you need a building, you need a facility to get that. And now with AWS Ground Station, you can actually avoid those kind of things.
I mean, and just quickly to put it out there, just for people not aware, there is a project called the SCAR project, which is a square kilometer array, which is being built in the Karoo, which is a semi-desert to desert area in South Africa with not a lot of population, which is why it's free of radio noise. So it's a very good place to actually build that. And there've been talks around that, which is, if you want to know how to handle high data volumes, go read up on that, because that's like a few terabytes per second. Wow. And it literally is like a fire hose that if you can't catch that data, there's no way to get it back. It's literally, it comes the whole time because, we're monitoring. Wow. So those are some serious engineering and especially network engineering things going on.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, we have a few questions piling in on. Thank you very much for all the things you have. So first question, let me actually address the EKS question in the room from Sergey Shveiko. Sergey Shveiko asks, what is the best approach of autoscaling service in EKS up and down based on the SQS queue message throughput, considering the app that processes messages at real time? Who knows EKS? Okay, Koos.
So what you can do in this case is you can go set up a CloudWatch alarm to monitor your SQS depth. And then based on that alarms, you can actually integrate that with your worker node autoscaling groups to define how they should scale up and down based on that specific CloudWatch alarm. So anything that you can measure in CloudWatch, you can set as a scaling metric for your clusters. So I would
Is
use
there something
that.
specific for EKS that you need to do it, or is it just like vanilla autoscaling?
No, because in this case, okay, so let me quantify. If he is using EC2 worker nodes, they'll be inside an autoscaling group, and you would be able to trigger the scaling using that. If you are running Fargate as your worker nodes, then what you can do is there's also a mechanism in the capacity provider to use custom CloudWatch events to help you for your scaling.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. CloudWatch is actually one of the glues at AWS that help you connect everything. Lambda is the glue, S3 is the glue, and also CloudWatch is the glue, because any information emitted, any metric emitted to CloudWatch can be used for something, and in this case, it can be used for scaling up and down.
And then we have a service called Glue to make it everything more complicated.
Yes, which is not this.
Cool. Interesting question from Hello Near This. Hello Near This. I see Amazon CloudFront has launched in New Zealand. I'm confused what this is. Does it mean my S3 storage will be in New Zealand? Who wants to address the CloudFront elephant in the room?
I'll take it.
Okay, cool.
So CloudFront is another service. This is not replacing S3. It's an additional service that distributes your content all over the world. This is part of CloudFront is the content distribution or CDN network. So you might be familiar with this term from other services. The basic idea of CDN is take your data and place it as close as possible to your customers. So you're placing a lot of servers in different places in the world and replicating the data. So when the customer from New Zealand is accessing your data, you will get it from a server in New Zealand and save the trip to a server somewhere else. It can be the region when you're hosting your files or anything like that. That improves performance dramatically. This time saves this trip saves a lot of time, and the fact that it's physically very close to your customers prevent all kinds of issues like international disconnections or heavy loads. International loads, which might happen from time to time. You can define CloudFront distributions for your content on AWS, actually not necessarily only on AWS. And you can take an S3 bucket and expose it using CloudFront. You can decide if you want to expose it globally, you can expose it in a specific region in the world. So if all your customers are coming from a specific region, you don't have to pay the full amount for global distribution. That's possible as well. So there is a balance between your reach and the cost. And as soon as you do that, you're going to get an endpoint, a URL that you can use in your application. So instead of serving, for example, your images from an instance in AWS sitting in what's the closest region to New Zealand? I would say Singapore, probably.
Yeah.
Australia.
Sydney. We have Australia.
Sydney, probably. Yeah. So instead of serving the files from there, they will be served directly from the edge location. It's called the CloudFront service called edge locations in New Zealand, and will save a lot of time for your customers. I think I have a presentation somewhere. I'm going to dig the numbers that shows the amount of time being saved by doing that. Let me look for it for a second. If you have anything to add for now, that would be nice.
I must say CDNs are very important, right? So CDNs are helping cache your content globally. If you want your users to have a great experience. So even if you're serving your application from for some reasons from like Frankfurt, you can cache the content from an application in Frankfurt close to you in New Zealand. Of course, not everything. I think static content, yes, but there's also a way to do some active content. So you can cache those things locally. So for your customers, it would seem like it's much, much closer for them in New Zealand than it is actually in Frankfurt. So.
And you can save a lot of money by using CDNs properly, because that means that you don't need to hit the region like where your data centers availability zones are your servers. You can always hit the edge, and that's a way cheaper communication than going to the server. So I think if you design your architecture properly and take advantage of the CDNs, you will have a way cheaper service than if you are not doing that.
Right. No, absolutely. Yeah.
I managed to find the slide that I used when we did the launch of CloudFront in Israel.
Okay.
That was exactly a year ago.
Wow.
I hope you can see it right now. So
Um,
this is a
Wait. Let me plop it on screen. Like that. There we go. And wait, you are hidden now. And wait, let me hide all the things. Now we can see. Hey.
cool. So this is a 1 megabyte file response time, 24 hours average. So I placed the 1 megabyte file and just monitored it. One of them was served from CloudFront. The other one was served with no CloudFront, directly from, I think it was Ireland. And you can see the differences.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
this is 169 milliseconds versus almost 600 milliseconds to serve a file. And by the way, smaller files perform even better.
Yeah. I think this is also the fact that, no matter where your content is actually sitting in, as long as you are using CloudFront, you can get those response times quite low, because the point of presence, or a POP, is very close to your location, or hopefully close to your location. So pretty cool. Yeah. Thank you, boss, for digging this up. Excellent. So let's see. We have a few more questions here coming up. From Srinivas. Srinivas asked, currently we are using AMI and launching AWS EC2 using SDK. These have user data which runs on startup of that EC2. The script is to record the content in EC2, but I'm getting only blank screen. So my question here is, you're using the AWS SDK to launch an EC2 instance. Number one, there's potentially better ways to do it, especially if this is like a managed resource or something like that. You can use actual infrastructure as code tooling. Otherwise, script is record the content of an EC2. Maybe you can explain what is it actually recording, and what is the blank screen. If you're saying the blank screen like the screenshot of an instance, there could be a lot of things. My first suggestion here would be go to the EC2 console, right click instance settings, and get system log. That will show you the entire boot log of an EC2 instance, and potentially you can see some issues, why this instance doesn't start up or where does it fail. So that would be my suggestion here, at least from my experience in premium support, how we used to do it.
Yeah, but I think give us a little bit more description of what do you mean by script to record the content? Is it to write files on the instance, screenshotting? Exactly what does that mean? Because I think that's the part that we aren't fully understanding at the moment.
Yeah. Okay, cool. There's comments from Sergey regarding his EKS questions. What if I need a faster way? SQS metrics published once per minute. Doing then that way, you would have to have an external system to count. Because here's the thing, SQS metrics are published once a minute, and that's the minimum resolution you can have, right? Unless you have an external system that monitors the current volume in SQS by constantly queuing or asking SQS for this information, or counting the messages that come into SQS and counting it outside, there's no other way to do it besides just...
Or maybe use a service like Kinesis instead of SQS, and then you can have a real-time service for pushing events, because I think it's if it's something that needs to be that real-time, and again, does EKS scale that fast if you send things in that level of granularity? Will that make a difference? I'm not familiar with EKS, but maybe you need to have Lambda function to have that faster, maybe, I don't know, launching an auto-scaling thing in place. So those are some questions that come to my brain.
Yeah, so I was going to say that it might be worthwhile, like Marcia mentioned, I was looking at using a Lambda functions to rather process the specific portion of the request at least. Because remember, you can blend Lambda with other services, so you can have and you can have Lambdas processed directly off SQS queues. So like we mentioned earlier, that 1,000 limit is a soft limit of concurrent executions. You can normally easily lift that up to 2,000 or 3,000 if you need to. So that could be one way. The other way is, how do the requests end up in SQS? Is that via some kind of HTTP endpoint that you receive the request and then take that and pop it on the queue? Or how do they get there? Because what you can do is that could be the entry point where you start measuring the throughput. So if you see that goes above a certain level, then starts increasing. The other way, obviously, is if you start over-provisioning your amount of worker nodes. So you can say, based on that 1 minute lag, build in headroom to handle that. Because I mean, if you're going to have very, very spiky workloads, those are always harder to deal with. And one way of dealing it is having enough static capacity available to deal with those spikes, or like we just said, look at serverless for boosting that out, or moving that out to actually process elsewhere that is better suited to spiky workloads.
Correct. I would agree with this, right? So sometimes even having over-provisioning resources is better if you want to have the ability to treat spikes like this, right? If you want to make sure that you are 100, especially if you're using something more static like EC2 instances, like even though it's running on a Kubernetes cluster, it's an EC2 instance, it still needs to spin up, right? Unless you're using Fargate. Even Fargate takes a moment, right? It doesn't matter, right? So maybe having an over provision to handle the spikes would be a bit better than to having to react on that same minute, especially if you need this super tight react time. Sometimes not threading too close to the edge is better if the technology doesn't permit it, right? So giving yourself some leeway is worth the investment. Let me say that. Okay, more comments from Srinivas. Running an automation script which actually runs properly. The script gets executed properly. At the same time, I'm recording the desktop so that I can see the video of the script that is getting executed. So is this Windows? Because it doesn't matter, right? Even if it's Linux, even if you have X11 installed, your user data script will never be visible of being executed, right? It will run in the background, right? So it should not be, you should not be able to see the script pop up and do something, right? It's run as in Windows case, it's run as the system entity. In Linux, it's run as a root user, and it's not something that pops up and is visible. So,
but you can see it in the log files.
You can see it in the log files, exactly.
Off the top of my head, I remember Volog Cloud Init. I believe it's in there.
You can actually There's like the entire cloud output. There's a cloud output log as well, which actually shows the entire outputs, and there's also the cloud init log, which just shows the executions. But if you're using this script to verify has the script run, there's better ways to do it. Check the logs, and they should actually provide you with the outputs of this thing. And even if your user data script is doing something very complex, you can log yourself, log through that script specifically somewhere else. So I've been setting up these PowerShell scripts to do Windows bootstrapping, and PowerShell has a commandlet that basically logs every execution, everything that comes out of that script to a file. So you can do that as well. So that would be potentially a better way, unless you have a very specific requirement to record the desktop to do that. So again, maybe if you can explain a bit more, we can give more comments on that as well.
Yeah.
Cool. Before we continue, or actually before we get to more questions, there's a question from somebody. Okay, blockchain. Blockchain is something I have zero information on. I know that it exists, and I know roughly how it works. I know Kubus did some crypto thing. So a question is coming from Frox. Did everybody get blocked by running a proof of stake blockchain nodes on AWS? Like proof of work is heavy computation, but there's also so here's a question from Fox. But like proof of work is heavy computation.
Yes. So it's not the heavy computational part that is probably getting you blocked. It's the fact that you are using something that interacts with blockchain without contacting our security teams. The reason for this is that there's been a massive uptick in crypto miners that people install as malware anywhere they can just to get some value out of it. So if you approach AWS and you send them a request saying, listen, this is what I'm going to do, you can definitely do that. But they need to know about it. Otherwise, this will be flagged as abuse, because in general, the most use cases we see of this is abuse. So always reach out to support, log a ticket saying, hey, listen, this is what I want to do, and have them involve security, and then they can add that instance to an exception list not to be triggered by that. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think anytime you get blocked on AWS or your account gets, frozen or something, reach out to premium support or any kind of support on AWS, and they can help you resolve it. If it's a security issue, if it's something like crypto and blockchain, this could be an issue, right? As Kobe says, malware happens, and we have detections of actually detecting people running blockchain or crypto workloads on AWS, just so we can warn them that something is wrong. So there's an entire process behind all of that.
Yeah.
There's a question, another question, a very interesting comment from somebody on satellites, where I saw it somewhere. Don't satellites still use COBOL? Maybe, and we lost Boaz. Oh wow.
Yeah,
We
we are on the
Oh.
hour, so he had maybe
He
to
just ran
run
away.
or something.
No,
You saw COBOL and ran, yeah.
Oh, there he is.
Boaz saw COBOL and ran. So do satellites still use COBOL? I guess. If old ones, yeah, maybe, but it's not. It's not this.
I hope
I have-
not.
It doesn't
but-
really
no
matter.
idea.
They need to collect the data somehow. That's
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter.
they can
which-
run COBOL.
They can run COBOL anywhere. So I still know software systems that run COBOL, and I know a person who built them, and they are still maintaining them. So oh my god. Okay. So a few last questions because we need to wrap up right now. So Sergey comments that latency is very important, so that's why I didn't consider Lambda usage. Okay. I'm not sure what is the latency here, but Lambdas can be very latency free as well. So make sure to check out non-VPC Lambdas because they can be much faster, or pre-provision capacity. No. But
Pre-provision capacity, probably.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So Sam the tester, maybe we can answer this one quickly. Simple question: how do you add claims to access token via Cognito triggers? Could not find anything on AWS docs or in community forums. I don't know anything about Cognito triggers, so and the comment on top of it is, I mean, it only allows you add ID token.
Yeah, I don't remember this on top of my head to be able to respond right now.
Sam, do come back next time. Basically, in a week from now, we're having the same thing, and we're going to try to address this question for you as well. So we'll take a note of this question and try to address it as well, so we can provide you with an answer, because we don't know the answer off the top of our head, and we have to be ending the stream pretty soon. So first of all, thank you everybody for your questions. Thank you everybody for the interactions. We always appreciate when people come and ask questions and chat to us in chat. We talk to each other often, so it's not fun. It's more fun to talk to you guys.
It is fun.
It is fun, okay, yeah, but it's more fun to talk to the folks in the stream. So that's number one. Number two, do not forget to register on the link. The Dev Day, Modern Dev Day, it's coming up in 2 weeks, apparently. And register and watch us there. Try to entertain you with some good technical content. It's going to be very cool. Boaz can watch for that because Boaz organized it all. Exactly.
We're just there for the party.
Yeah. Boaz.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah. So with that being said, thank you very much for all the things, and we hope to see you next Wednesday at the same time, at the same place. I wish you a nice rest of the week, and thank you.
See you.
Bye.
Cool.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.